Hi guys, in this video I'm going to talk about audiences when it comes to Google Ads. Now, historically and even still now, Google Ads is known specifically for keywords. That's what people has always associated with. Someone searches, your ad comes up in Google, you click on it, you go to your website. And that's still, for me at least, always going to be the core component of what makes up the platform. But more and more since around, let's say 2014, 2015, there's been this increase on how you can leverage audiences. And when I talk about audiences, I talk about it quite broadly. People might read that as big data. Effectively, it is understanding different people in terms of how they are engaging with your site and how they're engaging with you as customers or potential customers. And the power is taking all that information and then overlaying that with what you're doing on Google so that you're not just serving people ads based on what they're searching for, but you're also doing it based on what their potential intent is. So for example, someone who searches for the iPhone X, just generally that you're targeting, could have any kind of intent and you don't really know. But someone who searches for the iPhone X, who you know has already visited your page before, well, you're a little bit more aware of who that person is. And so it's taking things like that, and that's a really sort of top line example, but it's taking things like that and using audiences to further refine how you run Google Ads and be more strategic. And for me, I think in a market when it comes to Google that it is now costing what the fair market price should be, it can be competitive in some spectrums. Using audiences doesn't completely open things back up to everybody, but it's going to make how you do your marketing on Google potentially more efficient because you're not going to have to go after everybody on a blanket basis. You can pick and choose. So I'm going to bring up a little visual here, and it's going to help us just conceptualize what some of the main audience targeting types are on Google Ads and to really understand what they do, how you leverage them, and the power of actually then going away for yourselves and deploying these on your own campaigns. So let's get to it. Okay, cool. So these are the three audience types that I want to talk about. Now, there are a couple of other types that are a bit more higher level than these. So just to touch on those first, there is a type called demographic targeting, which, as you can imagine, lets you target people based on demographic data. I think it's things like household income, for example, is one of them. But at the moment, what falls into that section, in my opinion, is still quite sparse. It works off of the Google data that's collected for those demographics, but I think it's still quite high level and may apply to certain niches, but for the majority of people, I think that might be an audience type that will be better served as time progresses and Google starts to deploy more of the data they have on all of us within that particular audience section. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, but just giving you context. Now, the other one that you don't see here that is also available is known as in-market audiences. So in-market audiences is effectively people who have been searching within a particular vertical. So it could be hospitality, it could be tourism and travel, it could be finance, it could be automotive. And what you can do is you can pick one of those verticals or multiple verticals to try and show your ads to audiences that have been searching or purchasing for products or services that fall within that broad industry. And again, it is quite broad because financial services or automotive can be, quite far and reaching. You can drill down to subcategories on some of them, but again, you don't know necessarily how that higher intent then relates back to you as a business. It's still useful. Just bear in mind it's quite macro in of itself still. Whereas these that I want to talk about here are a little bit more specific to you and your business. So the first one on the left is RLSA, which is always nice acronyms get thrown around. It basically just stands for remarketing lists for search ads. And this effectively works off of the tag that you put on your website. And it allows you to create different lists based on how people have engaged with your site. So whether they've visited the site or visited certain pages, you could create lists for someone who have signed up or checked out. You could create lists for people that have visited certain product pages. If you have loads of product ranges, you may only want to have lists for people that, let's say you're a fashion retailer. Well, give me a list of all the people that have visited the men's fashion page or the women's fashion page or the baby clothing page, as an example. You can also create combination lists. So once you create more higher end lists that are, just about page visits, you can then start to get a little bit creative and do things like someone who's visited a page but hasn't purchased, right? So that's quite powerful if you know that someone's been to a men's fashion page for a particular item but hasn't purchased yet. They're further along than someone who's never visited the site, so you can give them a different message. You can also do things like basket abandoner lists. So anybody that has got to the checkout but not got to that final order confirmation page. So that's like as far along as they can get in the journey, and they're clearly going to be valuable to retarget to as well. So there's all these different things that you can do to create different types of lists, and then when you apply them, they allow you to do a few things. Number one, you can in theory be more aggressive in terms of how you bid for those audience pots. And number two, you can potentially give them different messages based on who they are. So that is the power of using remarketing lists for search ads. Now, moving along to the middle option, customer match, does very much the same kind of thing in terms of how you create these lists, but it actually leverages your own data. So, for all the talk of big data and everybody going wild about it over the last few years, ultimately big data means jack shit unless you use it in a way that's strategic and can actually leverage it. So customer match is a way of leveraging it. It's a way of taking all the data you've picked up on your clients, on your customers, that you're sitting on in your CRM, and trying to actually put that into different segments. Maybe you have people that have purchased that live in a particular geographic area. Could you take that and upload that into Google so that you can then remarket to people only within that pot that are searching for the types of keywords you normally show ads for? And that's going to be powerful because you know where they're based and you can give them different messages around that, whether it's offers or just alluding to the location. And that's just off the top of my head. I mean, you can obviously get a lot more granular than that. It depends on the context of what your business does. And in both cases with these as well, I need to point out, I forgot to say, you can also create different duration-based lists based on how people are engaging. So, this is something that's good for retail, which I used a bit on Asda, Walmart in the UK. So, Halloween would be quite big for them as an example. So they would basically capture lists of people who have been to their site only within the window of them promoting Halloween. And the same for converters, like people that have purchased, but only within, the Halloween window and bought Halloween products. Now that's obviously useful because then year on year, when you get to next year's Halloween, you can then start to retarget people that have already purchased Halloween products from you in the past. And I'm using Halloween as an example, but for Halloween, you can insert Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Christmas, sales events, any seasonal events that you might have, whether it's, Walmart did these baby events every quarter. So, we did the same thing with that. Easter, you can start to overlay event plans and create audience lists based on how they engage, not just on your site generally, but on your site within particular seasonal events, which is also useful. Finally, on the far right here, we have what's known as similar audiences. And for those of you that do Facebook ads, you can just read lookalike audiences for this. It's effectively the same thing. And this lets you take your customer match or your RLSA audience list that you create, and Google gives you another list. It's always bigger, of what they consider people similar to those pots. So say you uploaded a list of, all visitors to the women's clothing page of your site. Well, Google will then give you an audience list of people similar to them. And that's a good way to potentially find new acquisitions and drive more awareness of your brand. Because in theory, the similar audiences are going to be, yes, colder than those that have already engaged with you, but in theory, warmer than those who are completely unrelated and not similar at all. That's the theory behind it. It's a good way, if you're going for awareness building, instead of going just for anybody and everybody, maybe going for the people that are similar to those that are already aligned with your business and that have purchased from you before. And again, as I say, it applies to customer match too. You could do it off of, any segmentation data that you upload and try and find people similar to them. And already you could probably imagine, even just by talking about these, it can start to get really convoluted, isn't maybe the right word, but it can get quite detailed. And so the key thing really is, you want to start high concept with this, and you want to really take, the top line approach of just start simple. Who's visited your site? Who's visited but not purchased? Who's a basket abandoner? And then maybe, people that have been to really high volume category pages. Start there before you then start to look at, different combination audiences and going crazy with like really niche segments as well with your customer match data. Start a little broad. Then once you see how it performs, you can start to drill down a little bit more and get more granular. But I think however you do it, the main thing is to do it and deploy this, because audience data is key. Google are leaning into this more and more and more. That's only going to continue. And as I said at the top, at the start of the video, really now it's not just about keywords. It is about this intent of the user and trying to contextualize the journey for them more than anything. And this is really what underpins how you can do that. So I hope that this gives you a good bit of insight into the audience types, how you can use them, what they are. And then from there, really just the inspiration to go and, if you haven't done it, go away and do it and deploy it and see how it performs. So I'm going to wrap it up there. If obviously there are any questions or comments or feedback, please leave them in the comments. And if this is a video that you valued, then it really means a lot to me if you could, like it, share it. Please do share it with the people who you think would benefit from hearing about this and learning about audiences. And until next time, have a good one, and I'll be back soon with another video. Thanks for watching.